Good morning, Dr. Mullarky. Thank you so much for agreeing to participate in this new endeavor that we have to try to interview different scientists and discuss their different scientific journeys, their different path into the successful individuals that they are. So, Dr. Mullarky, can you give me a little bit about your background, a little bit of information about you, as well as your current position here at Virginia Tech?
So I was born outside of this country in Brussels, Belgium. My parents are actually of Russian descent, so that's my first language. And I grew up in New York City, which people find interesting because now I work in a dairy science department, and needless to say, cows are far and few between in
Yes,
city life.
yes.
I was a pre-veterinary student. That was my goal, as is common among animal science, dairy science majors. And to pursue that, I went to the University of Vermont, where I got hands-on experience with cows and also the opportunity to do undergraduate research, which is where my love of research began, though my pursuit of vet school did not end at that time. I completed my master's at the University of Vermont, and having done that, I realized that I really enjoyed teaching. So for me, the interest in basic research and teaching is what drove me to continue on to my PhD. I completed my PhD at Penn State. And
Yay, Penn State! I did my undergrad there. That's my undergraduate school, so.
Very, we all bleed it. And that was when I dove into a little bit of immunology, mostly still in the bovine model, and I also did some microbiology work, got into infectious disease, and worked with Staphylococcus aureus, which is really my goal in life, to find a vaccine against this bacteria. Having done most of my education at that point in animal-based programs, I decided it would be good for me to learn a little bit about immunology outside of the ag model. And I pursued a postdoc at the Trudeau Institute, which is in upstate New York, in one of the coldest locations in the US. Amazing place to work, amazing place to do postdoctoral work, loved every minute of it, did not enjoy the cold weather. Having spent 3 years there, I then accepted a faculty position here at Virginia Tech as an assistant professor, and I was in that position until just a few months back when I got tenure, and now I'm an associate professor.
Congratulations! Thank
you very much.
That's a big thing.
So overall, my pursuit of my career, I think, follows a path that many students follow. As pre-veterinary students, a lot of students don't end up going to veterinary school and do end up finding something else while still working with animals. And I think I've achieved that. I still work in the bovine model. Most of my research is in that model, which I think is an excellent model for studying immunology in an outbred population. I do still work with mice. I dabble a little in the pig model, and of course I teach both in classes and in the lab, and that's really why I decided to be a professor, is because I really enjoy interacting with students, teaching them, and influencing them. And that I learned from my mentors. I have had excellent mentors along the way, both at the undergraduate level and at the graduate level. Some of my best mentors are the ones who pushed me the hardest, who probably sent me home crying because I didn't think I was good enough or couldn't do what I needed to do. As a graduate student, we've all been there. But it's the mentors that push you to find out what your limits are that I think are the mentors that have the biggest impact on your life. And I've been very lucky to have a few of those every step of the way.
Well, that's already sounds like an incredible journey. Let's go with a little bit of some details. Specifically, you said that you really found the love, for science, love for research while doing undergraduate research. Is that when you first began to think about that you one day wanted to become a scientist, or did you have this feeling before then?
I think that was probably the first time I considered doing something outside of the veterinary field. Up until then, I was driven to become a veterinarian and do clinical work, and having the opportunity to work in a laboratory really opened up for me some new options, and I was grateful for that. So that was the first time I began to consider becoming a scientist.
So you would say that was a very valuable experience doing that undergraduate research. Would you say that that's something that if you're thinking about being a scientist, you should start early in your career?
I actually would say that any student in the sciences should at least for a semester work in a laboratory or do some type of research. Whether they end up hating it or loving it will help them make decisions about their ultimate goals. And at a university here like Virginia Tech, there are so many opportunities to do research in so many fields that whether it's with human studies or animal studies, whether it's basic research or applied research, that opportunity I think is imperative for all students to really understand what research is about and have it impact their life, whether they're directly involved in it or indirectly. Research does affect us all.
Yeah, I completely agree. So was there any specific experience or something that really influenced you to go the route for looking further into animal science compared to, let's say, human? Did you always love animals? Is that why you went that route?
That's a very good question, and I think the honest answer is yes, I've always loved animals, but I think I don't always get along very well with all types of people. So to become a doctor and deal with people all the time was daunting for me. Working in a lab is a little antisocial, one might say, so you don't have to interact as much. Having said that, I now interact with students every day, but I still think that's different than telling people what to do or what decisions to make about their medical health, let's say. So I never really considered that as an option, and I did always love animals, so that seemed like a logical fit for me.
And you mentioned that you really enjoy teaching. And I know there are some graduate students and some PhD that go through their graduate school without ever teaching. Do you agree with that? Do you think that they should have it, like you said, maybe 1 year, 1 semester of teaching so they can, get their hands and socialize more or get that experience, especially if they would like to continue their school, their education in academia?
I think first off that everybody who works in the lab teaches at one point or another, because usually they have somebody who's working with them or helping them and they're teaching them.
That's true.
So I do think that teaching in a classroom setting is an important experience, because if you want to work in a lab, you need to learn how to teach people and work with them. Whether you want to become an official professor or teacher, that experience is beneficial. I've had students that say, I definitely don't want to teach, but then teach for a semester and realize that they love it. So just like earlier we spoke about undergraduate research opportunities, I think trying things and learning what you like and don't like about them, as well as what you're good at or bad at, is a valuable experience. It helps build your resume, regardless of what job you want. I think most people who hire PhDs like to see that they've had some teaching experience. So personally, I require that of my students.
Well, thank you for that. I think that's something that some, scholars would definitely want and need to hear. So, did you have anybody or certain people that encourage you to pursue, your undergraduate career, pursue going to graduate school? Did you have, like your parents, were they supportive of your decisions?
My parents have always been very supportive. I'm very lucky about that. I don't recall my dad ever liking the idea of being a veterinarian, but he's very pleased where I'm at now. I always knew I was going to college. I think most students nowadays feel the same way. Given the opportunity, that's what they would like to do. So I never thought about alternatives, though there are alternatives to college. In terms of graduate school, I was very much persuaded and pushed to do that by my mentors. So specifically, my undergraduate research mentor, Dr. Woody Pinky, pushed me into graduate work. He really felt that would fit me better than becoming a veterinarian, and in retrospect, I happen to agree. And similarly towards PhD, him and the members of my master's thesis committee strongly encouraged me to pursue a PhD. So I've, like I said, had very good mentors who saw things in me that I was too young to identify for myself, but I was not so stubborn as to not to listen to them. So that's some advice I would give to everybody. People usually give you suggestions based on their experience, and if they're older, their experience is broader most of the time and worth listening to.
And you touched on this a little bit before, but what do you think makes those individuals, those mentors that you spoke about, so influential? What makes a good mentor? Being a mentor now yourself.
That's a very good but difficult question to answer. My students tell me I am intimidating. I still don't know why, but I believe them. I want them to be the best at what they can be. I think ultimately that's the bottom line. The people that are interested in seeing their students succeed are going to be good mentors to them. That's the first step. The second step is being able to communicate and understand what pushes people. Every single student is so different. I can encourage one student one way and succeed, and then try the same path with a different student and fail miserably. What encourages or causes students to, what motivates students is really, really different. What motivates all of us is different. So I think a good mentor needs to identify the correct motivation for each student and then use that to push them to succeed to the best of their ability. Again, people's abilities are very different, so you have to be willing to see that as well.
So the ability to adapt to change, to be flexible, understand that not every person learns the same way, understand things the same way. It's kind of like being in a classroom, once again, taking, experience from teaching that, you might teach the class, this way one semester because that's the way the most of the group, those students would understand. Come in a different semester, you have a whole group of people who maybe like more hands-on than being lectured. So it's that flexibility. I can definitely see that. So it seems like you went through a very distinct path. You went to college, you did undergraduate research while you were in undergrad. You got into a graduate program, and then after the graduate program you did a postdoc. So is that a usual path now that you see most graduate students in your specific field go to?
Yes. Students, PhD students interested in academia, I strongly encourage them to do a postdoc. I think it's an important stepping stone. There's actually a really good book called A PhD is Not Enough that I have all my students read that talks about how to run a lab, something that we are not taught in graduate school, but with the right postdoc mentor you can learn a lot, and how to manage people. Again, as a person who runs a lab, whether academic or non-academic setting, you have to learn how to manage your time and manage people and manage their time. Not a focus of most of our graduate work, but a focus that you can learn more about during a postdoc. A lot of students that are interested in industry, and I've had one such student, did not do a postdoc. She went right into industry. So It depends on the path that the student is interested in, but I think my postdoc was actually the best part of my science career. No exams, no dissertations, just research. And
that sounds fantastic.
It was. And I have spoken to a lot of people who I think would agree. But you have to know what you need to get out of your postdoc and choose wisely.
And do you think there's a prescribed amount of time you should be a postdoc? Like, it shouldn't be less than a year, no more than 3 years, or does it really depend?
I think there's a prescribed amount of time. I think 1 to 3 years is the right amount of time for someone. I know that nowadays, with the economy the way it is, positions are harder to find, so some people are completing 2 postdocs. But if you are in a postdoc and you are productive and you're good at what you do, you should be able to find a job. Some people choose to be research associates, so extend those postdocs into full positions and not become PIs. That's different than being a postdoc for too long. And I do think you can be a postdoc for too long.
Gotcha. So, in your pursuit of your career, did you have any challenges along the way that you had to overcome?
I don't think we have enough time to cover all the challenges. Life is challenging. My mother's favorite quote when I call her to complain is say to me, "At least you're not bored." She's right. At least I'm not bored. With every challenge, every day, every student, every hurdle, personal, professional, those are the things that make up life. So I don't think there's any specific challenges that I need to mention other than to say the support you have to get you through those challenges is really what's important. I try to provide that as our graduate director to some of our students. Clearly, I try to provide that to my students in my lab, and I'm lucky to have colleagues that provide that for me.
That's fantastic. I know I am sometimes, well, a lot was asked by my undergraduate students how, if they do decide to pursue a graduate career and then, get into academia, how to balance that whole work and life, and make that successful. Do you have any advice for an individual that is thinking about graduate school and entering academia and letting them know that it's possible?
It's very possible. You need to know what your priorities are. Everybody's priorities are different. And your priorities change, so you have to be willing to reevaluate. I have colleagues that have small children, and they spend more productive hours, but fewer of them here at work. I don't have children, so I have more flexibility to stay late and probably have some hours during the day where I'm more social than not, because I have that opportunity. So it just depends on what your priorities are. In this day and age, I don't believe there is any hurdle that can't be overcome. There's plenty of resources to help you overcome them, and you should take advantage of them. And you should ask the questions when you're looking for a job that make sure that you get what your needs are and that you know that your priorities are being met. Don't be shy about it. I think females have a tendency to be more shy than males, so when you're going through the searching for a job, get some males to help you out, because they're going to put it on the line and they're going to tell you what to ask. They're bolder. And that's something that I know, so I take advantage of it. Again, knowing how to get people to help you to overcome whatever it is, and I don't think there's any limitations.
Well, that's definitely a great piece of advice. The reason that I asked that is I remember one time after class I had an undergrad come up to me and says, I was thinking about going to graduate school, but I really want to have a family, so I don't think it's going to happen. And that kind of shocked me that thinking was still there. There's some people think that you cannot pursue career, be a professional, be a professor, and not have a family, not have, and whether that family means children or no children. So I always ask that question to successful individuals, just so that others can see that it is a possibility. So thank you for answering that question. I asked you what you thought made a good mentor, but I didn't ask you, what do you think makes a good grad student? We have some scholars that are going to be watching this, and they're just going to be entering graduate school. So they probably would appreciate some advice, some hints of what's going to help them through those 4 to 6 years.
What makes a good graduate student? I have been very lucky. I have had some excellent graduate students. Motivation, knowing what your goals and priorities are and obtaining them and reaching for them. Good work ethic, that's really important. And probably the ability to work with others, because you need help along the way, like I've already mentioned. You work in you live in a lab in our field. You live in a lab and you need to get along with the person or people you live with. So knowing how to manage your time, knowing how to have good professional relationships with both your peers and your mentor. But it all comes down to knowing what you want and working to get it. You got to be motivated. You got to do what you got to do, because you're going to have to work hard. And it's not about saying, oh, somebody else is working less than me or more than me. It's about doing what you need to do to get the job done. It's your degree, and you have to earn it, is what I like to say.
Very true. Very true. So if for some reason we have this time machine and you were able to go back and talk to yourself when you were entering graduate school, what do you wish you would have known? What would you say to yourself to help that part of your life?
Wow, I've never been asked that before. As a young female, I think, as most young females, a lot of insecurities, some of which aren't founded, and distractions, some of which shouldn't have been there. So focus more, stress less, listen to the people who are telling you good things about you more than just hearing them. Really listen, because usually when people are saying something good to you or complimenting you, they really mean it. And taking that in will help with the self-confidence, which always, well, that's just a good thing to have. So I think those are probably the main pointers I would say to myself.
And how would you tell somebody to handle that criticism, constructive criticism that they probably will get as part of teaching them how to do a certain thing or to work with a certain equipment? You know, as a graduate student, I think that you have to be able to take criticism and not let it, be personal. And how have you been able to deal with that?
I'm lucky. I'm very good at taking criticism. I'm also very good at listening to advice, especially if it's negative for some reason, and implementing it. That is imperative as a graduate student. It's even more so as a professor starting the grant writing process. Those first years of rejections, the first thing everyone's first instinct when you get a rejection letter or critical advice is to bounce back and fight it. No, that's not right. No, you're wrong. And that's fine. Go ahead and do that. Simmer down. Give it a couple of days, reread, rethink, reevaluate what you were told from a different perspective. Because that period of settling down is normal, but then think about it, write it down, whatever it is that helps you process it. And again, most people who who take the time to give you advice are doing so for a reason. We all have very busy schedules, so if I'm taking the time to sit down with a student, or if my technician is taking the time to train them, it's because we think you have what it takes, whether it's positive or negative criticism. So that's the way you should see it. You should see it as a flattering attempt to improve you, and all of us can improve. Period. End of story. For the rest of your life, assume you can always be better, stronger, more confident. So anyone who's willing to take the time to help you attain that, listen to them.
Thank you for that. I have to say, one of the most surprising things that what my advisor and mentor told me once, that, here's this woman who's very successful. She has had tenure for a while, has had multiple grants, and she told me that, sometimes when she goes and submits a paper, she still gets rejected. When she submits a grant, sometimes, till this day, it doesn't get funded. So that kind of shocked me, but at the same time, it made me feel okay that even here's a successful person that still has to take back, move, look at things and reevaluate and try again. So thank you for that, and thank you for this wonderful interview. I know a lot of our scholars are going to be viewing this and taking notes about a lot of things that you said. So thank you very much. Once again, thank you for participating in this scientific journey project. And we wish you the best. And once again, congratulations on getting tenure.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.